YouTube land, good morning. Today I'm going to tie a Brown Wulff, and I'm going to tie it on a size 12 MLO 52 hook. It's the standard wire hook. For thread I'm going to use 18-aught gray nano silk, and I'm going to give it a shot. So this is kind of a fun fly to tie. They fish well, they float well, they're very high visibility with the white wings, and they're pretty indestructible. So I'm going to use some really fine calf body hair for a wing, and I've been playing around with this stuff. It's it's very fine, it won't flare, and it's just kind of interesting to work with, so I'm going to give it a shot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my thread right behind the eye, and I'm going to come back about halfway down the shank, and then I'm going to bring it back up a little less than halfway. I want to give myself room for a couple of hackle wraps in front of the wings. So I've got some hair stacked already. So I was doing some research into the origin of this fly, and I called my friend Jack Dennis, and you know, Jack's a man of few words, and so he got straight to the point. I'm just kidding. I knew he had something to do with the Brown Wulff, which is basically this fly with a parachute style hackle. But Lee Wulff actually tied the original Wulff patterns, I think, in around 1929. And you know, he didn't tie with a vise, he tied in his lap. So they were kind of buggy looking, bushy looking bugs, but they sure did fish nice. And so anyway, I'm going to try to do a good job here. I'm going to use a biot body instead of dubbing. Sometimes I tie them with dubbing, and I'll incorporate like a strand of crystal flash for a rib. But today I'm just going to try to do this with a biot body. So I've got my wing tied in, and now I got a little butt section in there. A lot of people will, at this point, will parachute this. We'll do like a parachute post here, and I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just attempt to split these wings, and then post them up individually. So what I want to do now is I want to just kind of get everything pulled back and build up a little bit of a thread dam. Now I'm using 18-aught thread, so building up a thread dam could take a little while, but I'll just get a few wraps in there and try to get them in nice and tight to where that wing attaches, and there we go. Alright, so now I'm going to divide them and post them. And I'll try to do as much of this as I can without getting my my hand in the camera. So you'll have to bear with me a little bit. So I'm going to just I'm going to try to do like a 50-50 split. Just kind of eyeball it, and then I'm going to bring my thread from back to front, a few wraps. And now I'm going to bring this wing to the side. I'm going to do just exactly the same. Okay, so now my wing is basically split and pretty close to 50-50. And there's always going to be a lot of little fibers, especially with this really fine calf body hair. They're going to get away from you, so I'll try to do a good job of cleaning up as I go. Alright, so the first wing I'm going to wrap is going to be the one that's closest to me. So I'll go ahead and turn the vise a little bit. And all I'm trying to do here is get some nice flat touching wraps. I'm just trying to gather this wing. You know, I don't really have to worry about putting too much tension on it and it flaring on me, because this is not that kind of hair. Alright, so I can get a little bit of a post there, and then I can pull back with my thread, go around the shank of the hook and kind of get it pulled backwards. Okay, now I'm going to turn it. I'm going to try to do the same thing with this side, and I need to get this wing kind of pushed back away from that eye a little bit. Okay, so now I can just come in and make sure I stay above the eye and right at the base of my wing. What these posts will also help me do is they'll help me to manipulate this wing forward and backward when I go to wrap my hackle. So I'm going to go ahead and get a few wraps just to gather it, and then the same thing I did on that side, I can pull back with my thread and do a wrap. Okay, and now I can manipulate these wings a little bit. So that's my wing set. I'll come in here and try to clean up a little bit as I go. And it looks, you know, obviously it's going to look a lot better to me than it is on the camera. The camera's going to pick up every loose little hair and any wayward fiber at all. Okay, so now I'm going to come down and I'm going to step off. And I want to try to, since I'm doing a buy-up body, I really want a smooth taper here. So there's a couple different ways I can achieve this. You know, with 18-aught thread, it's going to take a lot of wraps to build up a thread taper so that I don't have this step right here. I can use a little bit of dubbing if I need to. But the first thing I'm going to try is I'm going to use the butt sections of my tail fiber and see if I can eliminate a lot of it there. So I'm going to bring my thread back to the back. This fly does not have a traditional three-tail, you know, three-prong mayfly tail. It's got a much bushier tail. I'm still going to use Coq de Leon, but I'm going to use several fibers, so maybe a dozen fibers or so. And just pull them off perpendicular, trying to get them nice and straight, get my tip straight, and pull that off. Okay, so that's all. That looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is the same way I put all my tails on. I'm not going to measure it, I'm just going to hold it diagonally to my side of the hook shank, and then when I do a couple of wraps, I'm sitting on top. Okay, and then I'm going to get my butt ends right through the middle of my wings, and I can pull it to length. Okay, so that's about the length of the shank right there. And I can go ahead and put some pressure now and tie these butt ends right up to where my calf hair ended, and then I can bring the butt sections back, trap those down, and then something I don't do very often, but since I have such a pronounced step here, is I'm going to fold them back over one more time. See if I can eliminate a lot of that space there. And the butt sections, as you can see, they compress much easier than that calf hair, the butts of that calf hair do. Okay, so I'll go ahead and come in, and that's not really a step I do very often. Just trying to be a little bit innovative and try to get a little smoother little smoother working surface here. Go ahead and flatten my thread out. And I've got this little bump here to deal with, but I think I can get that under control fairly easily. And to stand my tail up, I'm just going to come back and I'm going to press with my fingernail and kind of get it bent up a little bit, and then I'll do the wrap underneath. Pull it tight. That sets that up. I have used dubbing before to do this, and you know, all the any method you can think of, but with the biot I really want it to wrap smooth. For a biot on this fly, I'm going to use some brown olive, and it's a really nice color, but it also, for goose biots, these are actually pretty long. So for a size 12 fly, that excuse me, that comes in pretty handy. So I'm just going to tie it in right by the tip. Bring my thread up, continuing to try to smooth things out a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and get my thread out of the way. And when I put biots on, I always like to use some sort of super glue. Whatever you like will work. I use the Wapsi Z-Mint. And I don't want to put a ton on, but I want to kind of coat all the way around. So I definitely don't want it dripping, or I don't need an excessive amount. And then I'll use a hackle plier to go ahead and wrap my biot. Grab it right by the tip. Just kind of let the weight of your hackle plier pull on your biot so you don't pull that tip out. And then I'll use the rotary feature, and let's see how we navigate these little bumps here. I just want it to kind of be smooth. It'll certainly show up on camera if it's not. And bring my thread back. Go ahead and tie this off. Okay. So there's my body, my wings, my tail. Looking okay so far. So for a hackle, this is a honey badger. It's a little bit spotted on the bottom. It's a nice color. If you're wondering what size this one is a 14. And I've got some, I've bared the stem, and I've also taken a few fibers off of the side that's going to wrap first on my fly. So I'm going to go ahead and tie it in with the shiny side facing forward. And I want to get this very secure. Make sure that my stem is completely tied down. Make sure it's going to wrap in the right direction, which it is. Alright, so now I need to dub. And the main reason for dubbing, it's not so much to make a thorax, because it's really not going to show. The main reason to dub is to create something for my hackle to bite into. And if you notice, the behind the hook eye in front of the wings is just about the width of the hook itself. And then behind the wings, we've got all that material wrapped in, so it's fairly thick. And so if I don't want you know, my hackle to kind of change angles when I come around the front, I need to level that up a little bit. So I'm going to put on, this is just some brown olive dubbing. I'm going to go ahead and start right behind the eye. And by doing this, I can ensure that I don't crowd my hook eye with my dubbing. And work my way back. So I want to make sure and keep it nice and even at this point, and then I'm going to come behind my wings and need a little bit more. I don't like to get into these little flies and then have to start picking dubbing off, especially fine and dry. If it's like hare's ear or something like that, it comes off, or ice dubbing comes off pretty easy, but this stuff winds on pretty tight. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this up. I want to make sure I wrap right back to where my body started. I don't want to see any thread wraps. Okay, and now I'm going to do a little bit more up front and try to get just try to get everything as even as I can before I wrap. You know, to me, the beauty of any of these kind of flies, the humpy, the Royal Wulff, any of these wolf patterns where you're hackling vertically instead of horizontally, I think, you know, the more bushy and the more uniform it looks, the better. So, and a lot of that has to do with this step right here. Okay, so I can just pull, make sure my wraps are nice and tight. Okay, so I think that's going to work out okay. Get my thread up out of the way. Okay, so now I'm ready to wrap my hackle. I'm pretty happy with the way that thorax looks. And so my first wrap is going to be just stem right down on the fly. And that first wrap I wrapped just off the back of that dubbing. And this is the part where I oftentimes can see dubbing showing through if I don't get that first wrap just where I want it. Okay, so I can see a little bit of dubbing showing through, but that's okay. And then when I get up to the back of my wings, when I think that I've probably got all the wraps I can get in there, I'm going to do one more and just kind of weave it between the wings a little bit. Alright, so now I need to pull my wings backward. And I want to do my wraps in front. So that first wrap, I need to get right up in front of those wings. And then work my way down towards the head. And I don't want to go too much because I will crowd the eye. I'll also finish this with a half hitch tool, which will help in pushing that hackle back and cleaning up my eye. So this is where I'm happy to have 18-aught thread, because tying this hackle off and not building up a lot of thread is easy to do with nice thin thread here. So I know that I've got a few hackle fibers coming off the front, but when I use my half hitch tool, I'll fix all of that. And the ones that don't fix, I'll just trim away. So now I'm going to just use this at the end of my whip finisher. And that packs everything back nicely. Keeps my eye nice and clean. Okay, and now I can kind of come in and, like I say, it looks perfect to my eyes, but I'm looking up on the screen here and I can see a lot of stuff sticking off. So I'm going to come in and just clean everything up as well as I can. A couple of errant hackle fibers. It doesn't really have anything to do with the way it's going to fish, but if you're trying to make pretty flies, it's important. So now I'm going to do a little head cement. I'm liking the Solar Res Bone Dry, and I really like this little tiny brush for getting in on these little heads and not getting it into my eye. Goes right where I want to put it. Okay, and then I can go ahead and give it the torch. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed that. It's a fun fly to tie. Like I said, it's really highly visible with these white wings. It stays together. If you wanted it to float a little flatter in the water, you could come in and cut all your hackle off at the bottom, which I sometimes do once I've been fishing them for a little while. But I like to start out like this, and I've had some really good success with these flies up on the New Fork River and the Bighorn and Thermopolis, I enjoyed tying it, and I hope you enjoyed watching, and tie up a few. Thanks for watching.